Becca, you came to us Sunday morning. So we had Becca here Sunday morning. Each one of them was somewhere Sunday morning preaching, and we had the joy of having Becca here. And she moved us in such a way that there's two things. It's going to be a long time. People are going to be talking about that sermon. And I'm sure they'll be inviting you back. So people were so moved by your preaching. And now we've all been able to share in that. We've been so moved by you as a person. And that's the same with each and every one of our speakers. Your authenticity has been so beautiful, and your wisdom and your warmth. So to all four of you, thank you for being with us. You have blessed us with your person and with your presence, and we're going to be going home just feeling so encouraged and blessed. So thank you so much. So Becca, I think I've made enough announcements. We're so delighted that you're with us. God bless you.
I can do this. I just feel like I've made so many friends. I mean, compared to how stiff I felt when we were doing our panel discussion versus now, it's like I see everybody and I know so many of our shared stories. I have loved doing the workshop. That was my favorite part. Oh my gosh, you look beautiful again today. Look. Thank you. The oil workshops were so fun about just practicing using oils and not being so serious with it, but just beginning these daily disciplines. And it's been really fun to just play with oils with you all. That has been a joy for me, is that. And also getting just to be in this beautiful space and enjoy it. So my topic today is revival, which is hysterical to me, is that I think it goes really well, and as we are wrapping up our time together about leadership that Rob was talking about, and about preaching from a space that is trauma-informed, and all the things we're learning about. And I think it's interesting, even just to say the word revival feels crazy. Like, what does it conjure up for you when you think of revival? Is it something, huh? I can't. A tent. What else? Glory Jesus, yes. Hands raised. Yes. 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 It is amazing what plants do, isn't it? They revive. Anything else comes to mind? Huh? Altar calls. Yes, the song Just As I Am. Holy Spirit. All kinds of things. Revival is an old school word. I loved it when Rob was preaching about 2nd Isaiah, the poet of Advent, and it was people in exile that needed revival because they had forgotten the Sabbath. That one of the biggest dangers of being in the exile is forgetting the Sabbath and needing to be revived. And to revive is like adding water to a plant. It's to breathe back into. It's to get your breath again. I don't think revival always has to be this exuberant, hands-raised, crazy-ass people. I think revival can even just be a breath. That we are revived when we breathe. Revive. So the first question, really, when we think about revival, is what kind of revival do we want? That's a good question, right? It's like the same in Joel. What kind of fast are you looking for? So what kind of revival do we want? And when I ask myself that question, it has to be a revival that is based on love. I need a love revival that informs justice, that informs surrender, that informs Scripture, all those ways that we are informed. If it's rounded and rooted in love, we can go pretty far. I had the privilege of hearing Gustavo Gutierrez preach at Vanderbilt University, and he talked about the idea of our whole lives are a love letter to God. that everything we're doing is part of this love letter. Now, I don't know about you, but one of the things I did in COVID when I wasn't traveling and getting outside the house or putting on my hazmat suit to go grocery shopping was I cleaned out a lot of drawers and cabinets. Anybody else do that? I cleaned out drawers I hadn't seen in decades. And I found a drawer where I'd written a love letter to my husband. We had been dating 6 months. We were engaged, not married yet. And in the letter, I write to him, "We've been through so much. I was like, what had you been through at 24 years old, falling in love with a beautiful man? That must have been really hard on you." Our love letters change. What we need in love and how we represent it and how we are revived in it changes as we get older. It would be not appropriate to write the same love letter to somebody you've dated 6 months and somebody you've been married to 40 years. It would be awkward. So what does our revival based in love, what does that letter look like now for you? It's a good question to ask yourselves. What are you wanting revival in? What do you want the breath to come back in and heal? It may not be the same thing. I remember, do you not love Dorothy Day? Dorothy Day is like the queen for me. I don't know. She's just everything. When I was growing up, Dorothy Day, and her whole idea of starting with a soup during the Depression and growing the whole Catholic worker movement. And I was so amazed by her life and the fact that she started an entire community and she named her autobiography The Long Loneliness. If you don't fall in love with somebody that starts a community and identifies as their life as the long loneliness, we know that as preachers, right? That there is this loneliness, like Howard Thurman says, that's in another key, that carries us beyond truth, that part of what it is as we search for a revival, as we search for truth, there is a loneliness in it. And so Dorothy Day writes at the end of her life that her revival, her spirit is revived now, and her work has become prayer. She starts this whole, demonstration movement throughout the U.S. And she moves towards prayer as her revival. Isn't that beautiful? So as we journey on and as we remember what it is to breathe into our own revival, that's where we should head. You move towards that space, knowing that is where your breath is the deepest and truest. And it will lead you beyond your boundaries. It will lead you into a new space to find that place where our longing and the needs meet in love and God's. Next thing I want to say is that revival is not selfish. It's not like you say, well, the world's going through all kinds of hell. In spite of that, I'm going to have a revival. Revival is in response to that. Revival is an act of faith. Revival is critical. If there is not revival, there is not breath, there is death. So as we're moving in and around and through the world, it is critical for justice movements. It's critical for the life of a community to be revived. It is not a selfish, Pollyannic way to be in the world. It is critical and essential. So when I started Thistle Farms, I'm chaplain at Vanderbilt, which I've stayed at for 30 years, have loved it, have grown with the community to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. In a sense of revival is rooted as critical in justice. But when we started 5 Women, 1 House, 1997, I told you my dad had been killed by a drunk driver when I was a little kid. He was an Episcopal priest, so I was raised by this beloved woman who was resourceful. If you want, there's some great stories about my mom in the book Practically Divine, all her old Southern sayings that are hysterical to me now. But, she taught me everything about community and resources and how to live and how to be an entrepreneur in this world. We opened the house, 5 women, no authority, no one living in, so I would go by in the evening to make sure everybody's working their program, doing what they need to do. It happened the week that I opened the house, my mom died. And she died of Jacob's Creutzfeldt, which is the variant of mad cow. So it was just a crazy time. Like, you can't even get your hands around what that means. And to watch somebody go through it is one of the more bizarre things, especially because nobody knew what it was, and it was just hard. But the timing, she was like so much to me, as a single parent, and we know that when you grieve one person, you're grieving a lot, all the other griefs that go along with it. So I was kind of in a tender space anyway, going by the house and thinking, I don't know if I can, how to do all this. And I drive up towards the house, and I'm looking in the window, and I see somebody going like this. Just like slow motion moving in the window, and I'm like, oh my God, they're drinking. Pull over, go inside the house. And there's a woman, Regina, who was the one dancing in the window, and I was like, what is going on? And she goes, I'm having a Holy Ghost party. And as an Anglican priest, I'm like, okay, well, what's that? That can't be good. Where's the liturgy for that? When Regina came, she was so broken down by this world and so beaten up that she had a cast on her leg. And she was so grateful and so happy to be in this beautiful, lavish, safe, gorgeous house that she had the key to, that she was moving in the spirit and dancing. And we laughed about it, and I went back to the car, and I just started crying. And I was like, oh my gosh. Part of me was crying, I know, because I was just grieving my mom. You know that tender space when your mama dies, anything can make you cry, or your father. And I was crying because I was thinking, like, I couldn't tell you ever if the Holy Spirit had moved me to dance on a broken leg. That's crazy. I was like, people heard Mary's Magnificat. People heard Moses' song, but I got to see Regina's dance. That spirit moving in such a beautiful and powerful way, and I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to be revived. Regina went on to become the National Director of Outreach and has helped thousands of people. She travels and helps start programs. She's amazing. She never lost that spirit. She is celebrating 27 years clean, living in that spirit. It was a true spirit that moved her and kept her going and bringing other people. That's what we're looking for, is this ability to be critical, to be revived, to keep you going for 27 years in that work, to find the place where the Spirit is saying, I know you're hurt, I know you got a weak leg, but just feel it. And remember to be in the presence of the breath, the Spirit, the love. You will be doing a service to your entire community. So revival as critical, revival as defiant. You can do what you will, but I am going to still breathe and claim the Spirit. One of the best examples of that was when we went to the refugee camp with all the women survivors who came across from Syria with their life vests that were broken and torn, and the UNHRC giving them blankets. And we went in 2017, And we said, let's start this movement for women in these refugee camps. Y'all know that women, immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, it's completely connected to human trafficking. That in the camps in 2018, when the U.S. Shared Trade Hope report came out, it was more than 12,000 young girls missing. They have no country, no ID, no representation. They're the perfect target. Let's go into the camp and let's start something with a small group of women and see what happens. People were concerned about it, saying, you can't just help 9 women. It's not fair. And it's like, please don't anybody ever say to me it's not fair. When the hell has it ever been fair? When has it ever been fair? And who promised us fair? Let's just do what we do, which is start to move, to do something, to see what rises, what breath happens, what life comes out of it. And you know, all the reports show if we can invest in women, there will be revival in community. You rape women, you take the breath out, and you kill community. So we came in, 9 women, they started weaving, they organized, and they do what women do. They started solving all the issues in the camp. They got buses to be organized. They do what they do. But they said, don't take our picture, don't do anything. We don't want any social media, nothing. We honored all that. We came back, People magazine did a story on it. Banksy discovered it. He developed his own mat design that all the women were going to design. So we went from selling them for $85 a piece to $500 a piece with a 6-month waiting list. And we were coming back. We went back like 8 months later, and the women wrote and said, look, we need matching long sleeve t-shirts with Love Welcomes. That's the name of the company that's now in the UK that's doing fabulously well, working with women refugees that are also newly landed and also in Palestine. It's always a good sign when a group wants matching t-shirts, right? I'm like, am I at a Lutheran youth camp? That's what I always want to know. Got there, and the women wanted to do a portrait in their new matching long sleeve shirts. And in the portrait, if you look on the website of Love Welcomes, you'll see this. Straight in the camera, fist raised. I'm here. Look at me. It's been hell, and I've gotten through it. I am revived. That this defiant place where we concern ourselves with the whole being of revival, meaning economic well-being, meaning spiritual well-being, meaning the dignity of work, all of it, brings revival to communities. And that's where we're headed on this. So revival that is rooted in love, revival is critical, revival is defiant. Revival as a tool to change impact, workforces, and relationships. In other words, revival has impact that other things don't get us to. Do you know what I'm saying? If we started on this conversation and said, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to divide into 14 subcommittees who will report back to 7 committees, and then we'll have another 35 meetings. You know the old joke, how many, I'm trying to think. Who do we want to pick on? Let's pick a denomination. We're a Baptist. Let's do Baptists. How many Baptists I'll do mine. I don't want to hurt your feelings because I love you. How many Episcopalians does it take to change a light bulb? Right. And the thing is what we know as church people is that it's not because we don't want to change light bulbs. We want the light bulb to change. It's just the process for changing it is this. Well, there's a lot of light bulbs to choose from, and we have to be concerned about the environment and the impact of that light bulb, and we need to know the budgetary resulting in buying that light bulb. So let's go send it to committee. And then it's like, not anyone can just change that light bulb. We need to have an election so that we know who is changing the light bulb. And so we can't do that till our annual meeting. So we'll talk about changing that light bulb next January. And then by that time, people are so used to candlelight, they say, we're used to candlelight now. Please don't put a light bulb in. It's like there's all these barriers. The only thing that really cuts through it is revival. Guess what? The Spirit moved me. I walked into the sanctuary and I changed a light bulb. And nothing bad happened. It was a gift. I just felt like it and I did it. Sometimes it will break you free from all of the other things. And it's a relief. Here's the thing, is revival doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be planned. Revival can be as simple as like one of the things that we've been doing at Thistle Farms for about 8 years, and I've done it in so many places. We have Justice Revival tea parties, and it consists of moringa leaves with a little bit of black tea blended. Moringa comes from all women off the streets in Mexico who grow moringa. Moringa's the new superfood. New York Times, move over kale was the name of the article. Moringa's a miracle plant. It is so good for you. It's like great for memory. It's all these vitamins. It reduces wrinkles. It's like the best. So now people use it in oil. They soak in it. They have a moringa mussel soak. They drink it. Anything you can do with moringa, people are just putting it all over themselves. So we'd have these moringa tea parties. And we gather people and we have this very simple ritual of being grateful for everything and honoring the moringa itself, the cup that it's served in, and then thinking about who we would like to share a cup with that might need a loving cup. And then cultivating our palate for justice and hope. It's very, very simple. We do these parties. People weep. People are hugging each other, cheering each other on. And I bet it costs about 3 cents a cup. Do you know what I mean? Like, bring that into your finance meeting. We're going to have a cup of tea. And it's justice tea. And we're going to talk about who grew it and why is it that the whole world of tea keeps the pickers in poverty, and how tea and human trafficking have always been linked, and how we can change it. It starts to get people revved up and thinking outside of their own community. And it changes the impact. It changes the way we do it. It changes the spirit in a room. Just what we did in our workshop upstairs for everybody that was in my workshop. Just smelling the oil and bringing it in revives us. And it has an impact. It makes life more fun, more joyful in it. One of the other things about revival that I think is really critical for all of us who are pastors and teachers and people that we want to be with is revival invites us to be a participant, not the leader. I don't need you to orchestrate my revival. And you don't need me to orchestrate yours. Feels coercive in that way, or not maybe as genuine as it could be. And that translates to everything we do, I think, in real deep justice work, is that we're not called to be the hero of everybody's story. Give people the dignity of being the hero of their own story and just be a good host. That our job as pastors, as leaders of communities, is to be a good host and give people the dignity to be the heroes of their own story. To get their breath and to say, I have moved into this new space and I feel good. I feel empowered. Thank you for setting that table and putting a bit of bread and wine on there so I could feast. But remembering, it's like it's not on you to be the cheerleader. That's not what revival means. You don't have to get up and cheer for everybody. You can get up and weep. You can get up and do exactly what Nicole was talking about, is speak your truth in a way that is trauma-informed, that is healing, that is caring, and you invite other people into that space with you. But to remind people, it is breath, it is life, that we find that place wherever it is for us and in our lives. Remember that revival is a starting point. It's not the end point. Do you know when I think of revival, I think more of Good Friday than Easter. Revival starts at the foot of the cross, not at the tomb. Not even on Holy Saturday. The revival is saying, guess what? This is love's crowning moment on the cross. And I move from there to find my way to Easter. So revival is the beginning of it. It's not the end of it. There's so much more along the journey. And so it's the sense of saying, I am willing to go there. I'm willing to be there. The other thing that I think is important for revival is that revival always has to be the soil. If it's the beginning point, it's the soil that grows things. One of the misnomers about the community of Thistle Farms is because of the community that is gathered, and I'm talking about tsunami waves of trauma in people's lives. Stories I've heard that just are inhumane, that you can't imagine. There's this misnomer that we must sit around and cry all the time. And there's a lot of things to be sad about, and there's a lot of things to grieve. But we spend more time together laughing, celebrating new babies and births and weddings and graduations. More than 75% of the women who come through the program graduate and are clean and sober 5 years later. There's so much to celebrate. So if we can sow in that soil the spirit of revival, there is joy and humor along the way. There's one of my favorite prayers. It's the prayers from the Missionary Women's Singapore group. Do y'all know that prayer? I made my husband write a tune to it. I love it so much. He wrote a mass years ago with it in it. God, stir the soil, run the plowshare deep, even though I weep. Overturn the hard, dry ground, dig furrows long, and in that mangled, loose earth, sow new seed, so fresh, fair flowers may bloom. That this is the soil that gets stirred up, this old ground, so that we plant new seed and watch fair flowers bloom. Revival, one of my favorite images about it is the idea that revival is the difference between crying for and weeping with. Revival is the difference between crying for and weeping with. If we are in revival, it means we are adjacent together. We are working on this idea of having breath and spirit communally, right? We want to stir the spirit up. We want to get it going among us. To to cry for somebody is to show sympathy. It's a distance. It's like, I'm so sorry you're going through it. I'm out of here. But to be with someone, to weep with, is to say, I will let feelings be there. I will weep with you. I will understand that there is this sense that we are in a faith where our Creator longs to gather us like a hen wants to gather her chicks. We want to be together in a space where we understand each other's pain and are willing to weep with and give each other the dignity of not trying to fix it. When you were talking about everybody trying to say the right thing after your dad died yesterday, that's like us just saying, like, we just need to weep with. That is revival. That is the way that we could be together. And the last part about revival is that please don't think you have to be inspired to do a revival. If we wait for inspiration, we may be sitting here a while. I'll tell y'all when I'm ready. I got nothing. And I preached about this a little bit on Sunday, is that in truth, as a pastor, nobody gives a damn if you're inspired. That's the truth. And we need to get over that feeling. Like we have to be inspired to do this authentically. We do not. There are many stories in the scripture where the disciples are not so much inspired, but fearful. Not inspired, but exhausted. Not inspired, but worried about their Lord. There's all kinds of reasons to not feel like, okay, let's go out and heal a bunch of people today. You know, it's like, no, there's only 5 loaves of bread. This is really bad. I'm the opposite of inspired. But the whole journey of faith is to keep going and to learn how to move past inspiration where faithfulness is. And we would do well to remember, that you will never, ever show up at your church and somebody say, oh, I bet you've had a hard week because there was a funeral. There's a lot going on. Why don't you just relax? I got the sermon. I got you. We're going to pay you the same amount. It's no problem. No, they'll either send you to like some kind of counseling center or, you don't get out of it, right? And it's the same thing I was saying on Sunday. It's like if you're a parent, I never came home after a super hard day and not one of my children ever said, what I want is for you just to relax. And I'll cook dinner, you go watch Law and Order, and I'll bring you some food and we'll just chill. No. As people of faith, we're like farmers. We go out and we water and weed and do what we're called to do. And the best example I have is feeling super gray and super uninspired, the opposite of revival, and flying to Nebraska in November. That's a dangerous place to be if you're feeling gray, is November in Omaha, Nebraska. It is. Everything is gray. The trees are gray. The buildings are gray. Everything. And I was feeling super depressed, but I did what I did. I went and I preached at a cathedral. I went and met with the foundations. We opened up a new house, traveling with one of the women of Thistle Farms graduates who we sell product, who gives a witness to how community heals, the oldest entity the world knows for healing. She was amazing. It was her first flight. She was excited to be there. 8 o'clock Sunday night, we fly out, and I think, maybe I'm done with this. Maybe I'm not going to do this anymore. And so I was feeling sorry for myself. She didn't understand the cardinal rule of don't cross the armrest since it was her first flight, so she was pushing me out of the way, so I was feeling sorry for myself like this. And then I realized she pushed me all the way out of the way, and we had gone up about 20,000 feet, and we had broken through all the gray clouds, and now there was this supermoon that was haloed. And even all those gray clouds were filled with shadows and colors that are hard to describe on a color wheel, but deep, dark, and lovely. And her head was on my shoulder, and she looked at me and she said, I didn't know there was a sky above the clouds. Can you imagine? But she had run away from a foster home in 6th grade. She had lived a horrific life in her teens on the street and in detention centers. And then we do what we do in the United States. When you hit 18, we graduate you to prison and call it justice. We call that tough on crime. It's the wussiest response in the world to crime. So she had never, ever had the opportunity to contemplate the top side of a cloud. I was like, Sophia, I'm good for another 5 years. I'm good for another 5 years because sometimes I forget. There's so many people who don't know there's something beyond the gray. That there is the vast expanse of interstellar space, the suns in their courses, the planets, this fragile earth, our island home, that we can contemplate. And we do this with each other to help each other remember there's something beyond the gray. We need to help each other get to revival. And sometimes, even if we don't feel like it, if we can trust, if we can keep going, the breath will come to us. Revival will come to us. It's not something we have to plan. It's something we live into and trust that the breath is there for us. That's what revival looks like. That's how we want to live. Revival is for the exiles. Revival is rooted in love. Revival is about gratitude. It is about being willing to stand on Good Friday and trust that Easter's coming. Thank y'all. Thank you. Thank you.